welcome to a brand new episode of Step into the Future presented by GE and partnered by Times Network. Hydrogen has the promise of transforming India from an energy deficient to an energy rich country. It can even make India a net exporter of energy. Hydrogen is considered one of the most sustainable fuels of the future. Now, under the green hydrogen policy, the government is offering to set up manufacturing zones for production, connectivity to the interstate transmission system or the ISTS on a priority basis, and free transmission for 25 years if the production facility is commissioned before June 2025. With this backdrop today, I'm having a special discussion with experts on hydrogen as the fuel for India's decarbonization journey. We will also be talking about how GE is enabling India's green hydrogen mission. Allow me now to introduce you to our panelists for today. I'm speaking today with GB Pradhan, former chairperson of CERC. Sanjeev S. Ahluwalia is joining us. He's advisor with the Observer Research Foundation. And I'm also speaking with Shilpa Gupta, India engineering leader at GE Gas Power. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much for joining us today. So, Ms. Gupta, let's begin with you setting the context for our discussion. Now, we know the basic challenges. India needs to decarbonize. There has been a new green hydrogen policy put in place. The devil, though, is always in the details. Can you start by giving us a sense of where the challenges lie and how you as a company can come in and facilitate that process?
Sure. So let me begin by first saying that all GE gas turbines today are capable of burning a blend of hydrogen to a certain extent. So we have our the HA gas turbines, we have our F-class, B and E, and also aeroderivative gas turbines that use a blend of hydrogen even today. So there are about 100 turbines that are in operation using hydrogen, which have completed about 8 million operating hours. And out of the 100 that we have, there are about 30 turbines which have actually run on blends of more than 50% hydrogen, completing about 2.5 million operating hours. So GE's experience with burning hydrogen as a blend is very strong. Now, how much hydrogen we can burn in our gas turbines depends on many factors, and the most important one is the combustion system, right? So we usually design gas turbines for natural gas. So when we start using hydrogen as a blend, you will need to change the combustion system because hydrogen has very different properties when compared to natural gas. So as an example, hydrogen actually burns at a higher temperature. It also has a higher flame velocity. So what this results in is higher NOx emissions and a phenomena that we call flashback or flame holding, which essentially damages components of the combustor. So now to counter these, what we have to do is we need a very intricate balance of fuel and air getting into the combustor. And that's exactly the technology that we have worked on. So what we've done is that we have an advanced premixer which combines and creates that optimum balance of fuel and air before it gets into the combustor. So it burns more uniformly and we can control temperatures and reduce NOx emissions as well as create the heat energy that we need. So this low nitrogen oxide hydrogen premixed combustor is actually developed in collaboration with the US Department of Energy as part of its advanced hydrogen gas turbine program, and this was developed between 2005 and 2015. So there's a lot of research that has gone into this, a lot of designs that we've tested, validated before we've actually put them on the field. So the 9HA.02 and the 7HA.03 gas turbines that are available today actually use this advanced premixer and can blend up to 50% hydrogen by volume. So that's the blend that we can use in our gas turbines today. And we continue to invest in technologies, but combustion is one of the most important ones that we wanted to talk about today.
You know, that really is the key question, and I'm going to come to our other panelists to explain why this is important. Mr. Pradhan, now the new technologies that were described by Ms. Gupta, other technologies that are also available, do you think it is key now to accelerate their adoption? What are the challenges right now? Is it a cost factor? Is it a wider availability of such technology? Because there is no question that we need to move to renewable.
Thank you, Tamanna. Very interesting to hear Ms. Gupta talk about the technology that has been developed by GE. I, however, have a different take on all this, if I may. My whole take on this is that this particular initiative of the government, and I welcome this initiative, it's wonderful. Wonderful to see the government put out the first part of the hydrogen policy. See, the whole aim, Tamanna, is basically to address climate change issues. I mean, why are we doing all this? It's basically because we are addressing the climate change issues. Number two, gas is something that we don't have. We don't have it. It's a fossil fuel and it's imported. So let's just keep that aside. What government has said in its first sort of part of the policy, because I think there will be number 2 and number 3 to follow. The first part is green hydrogen. Green hydrogen basically uses renewable energy to produce hydrogen, and to that extent the government has allowed interstate transmission to be without any charges, which means that you would have a 25-year period in which the wheeling can take place, and the renewable energy could be used basically to produce hydrogen. This makes sense because over the past few years the electrolysis and electrolyzers have been showing a downward trend in terms of costs, somewhat like solar panels. The cost has been coming down. We hope that this will be accelerated as hydrogen comes to the forefront in the whole battle against climate change. Now, having said that, I'd just like to take a few seconds to go over the fact that this is not the first time that India is attempting to look at hydrogen in a structured manner. It started very early this century. In fact, 2002, 2003 was the time when we had a very hard look at hydrogen, and we had identified transportation as one of the sectors where hydrogen would be used. So to that extent, of course, we have a lot of learnings from that, which I'm sure that the present mission would be closely looking at in terms of what, I shouldn't say went wrong, but how it just got into the background. Be that as it may, the point now is that the focus on hydrogen, green hydrogen, and let me tell you that all the efforts that are being made, from my reading, of course I have no internal knowledge, but from my readings I feel that government is very much behind green hydrogen. So the natural fallout is that you would necessarily have to use green hydrogen at points of consumption. I mean, that's the best, because hydrogen has problems in terms of storage, in terms of transportation. It's a very volatile kind of gas, and it has a number of issues. So the best, of course, would be to use the green hydrogen at the point of consumption, so that you could identify your larger industries like steel, etc., which are contributing to climate to emissions.
Now let's keep the conversation moving, and it's a very interesting point of view. At the end of the day, The larger issue is, how do you power an economy growing at the speed India is in a clean way? Mr. Ahluwalia, here is where I want you to come in and set the context of where we are right now. We're in the middle, or we're just, I would say, coming out of a power crisis. We saw that there's been a scramble for an increase of imported coal, and we need that kind of an energy. Now, do you think that this has in fact highlighted how quickly we need to now move to cleaner fuels, and green hydrogen is one of them?
Well, Tamanna, I think we're kind of jumping ahead of ourselves, I'd just like to step back and say that there is one aspect of the context that we must also set when we talk about green hydrogen. Now, as far as the advanced economies are concerned, green hydrogen has become imperative for them because they have a commitment to go net zero, that is net zero carbon emissions by 2050. In the context of India at Glasgow last year, the Prime Minister said that we cannot afford to go net zero before 2070, and China is going net zero in 2060. So I think whilst it is true that going towards green hydrogen is an enormous and a very forward-looking step for the global economy, in the context of India, we have to look at it very closely in terms of the economics of green energy. And there are two sides to green energy that we need to discuss. One is the supply side, and the other is the demand side. Now, as far as the demand side is concerned, as was just informed, that we can barely afford gas. Our existing gas capacity, which is around 30 gigawatts, most of it is running at a plant load factor of around 10%, because our discoms cannot afford the higher costs that emerge from using gas as a fuel, right? That's a fiscal, a financial constraint India has. And that we need to also flag as one of the limitations of going towards a green hydrogen.
Allow me to just interject there, because I think we need some more views on this particular point. You've talked about the economics of green hydrogen in the Indian context. I think it's important to get Ms. Gupta in on this point. Now, look at what Mr. Ahluwalia is saying. He's saying that we should step up from the Indian context as part of the global supply chain for green hydrogen. It's not necessarily the best bet for us because of the economics. Do you agree with that point of view, ma'am, or do you have anything to add to that?
So I think, Tamanna, I would agree that today, for example, I think the economics of hydrogen are not great. I think there is a lot more effort that we need to put in to build the whole ecosystem around generation of hydrogen and even transportation of hydrogen storage, right? I think there's a lot to be done. But today, yes, the economics of scale today is not at a point that's very attractive. So I think we'll have to introduce maybe the right technologies, we'll have to introduce incentives. So there is, I think, collaboration that will be required between the industry, the government, the policymakers to ensure that there is a more viable solution that is more, I think, attractive in terms of the levelized cost of hydrogen that we can have in the country. Now, there are other pieces of hydrogen that we need to take care of. For example, hydrogen can cause material embrittlement. It's also prone to leakages. So not just the combustion system, of course, that's the main portion, but we also need to look upstream and downstream when we start using hydrogen as a blend or even move to 100% hydrogen. So some of the areas that we are looking at are actually the fuel system that delivers hydrogen to the gas turbine. So that's upstream, the fuel and piping systems. The combustor, of course, that we already spoke about. And then downstream, we have the heat recovery steam generator and the other components that we have downstream, all of these have to be able to cater to this combustion of hydrogen with natural gas or 100% as we move forward. Now, this will also require a change in control. So other than the embrittlement and the flame, we also have to take care of plant safety systems. So we will need to introduce sensors, we will have to introduce the right kind of instrumentation and controls, the right kind of gas turbine enclosure as an example, to ensure that we cater to the safety requirements that come in because of using more and more hydrogen in our fuels. So these are technologies that we are continuing to work on, and we have a pathway when we start working on these technologies to reach 100% hydrogen, burning 100% green hydrogen on our gas turbines.
Now, the question here, and let me come back to you, Mr. Ahluwalia, on this point, is when we talk about the larger picture of renewable energy, you've talked about green hydrogen as being one of the options. Are you concerned that we may be now backtracking because of our immediate needs, and how can we utilize this current situation to move in the opposite direction, to actually press the accelerator on renewable energy?
Tamanna, I don't think that we are going back at all. In fact, we are going forward a little too fast than I would ideally like. Because as I said, there are downsides to committing. I'm not so worried about private investment, but at the end of the day in India, as you know, private investment is largely drawn from public sector banks. And we have seen in the past what happens when private investment goes bad, public sector banks take a hit, so the government takes a hit. I mean, everything is all combined in India. So I think that we need to be a little more cautious on the nature of investments in India. I do, however, say that we should, however, immediately adopt a very open stance to international collaborations, invite people to come to India, set up industrial clusters near ports, invite them to bring in their electrolyzer technology, associate them with Indian companies. For example, there are 3 or 4 Indian companies, or maybe more, which have already announced some very nascent and some more structured plans for going into an entire supply cycle for green hydrogen, starting from the generation of solar power, the electrolyzers, and then the use of green energy in refineries and in fertilizer sector initially. Government has also, by the way, sort of informally till now said that issued a mandate which says that to their own, I believe, to their own public sector fertilizer units and public sector refineries, that they should refineries should start using 10% of green hydrogen, initially take it up to 25% over a few years, and our friends in the fertilizer sector should use 5% and taking it up to 15%, something like that. So that's, the mandate-oriented route. Tricky again over there because, as we all know, fertilizer sector is already subsidized by the government. Government last year spent 1.4 trillion on fertilizer subsidy because the cost is higher than at what we sell to farmers. So if you increase the costs over there too early through the use of green hydrogen, then you'll have to subsidize it all the more. Refineries was not so worried about because, they're all profitable in any case, and it will only cut down on the government dividend that the government will earn from these companies, which is a bearable cost for, R&D and exploration and early stage, implementation. One reason is because it's the oil companies that have the experience in hydrogen. However, the government, I think, has notified the Ministry of Power as the nodal agency for this particular initiative, though they have formed some kind of a coordinating council. And, I also had a view on that, Tamanna, if I may just mention a view on that, I think, there have been so many statements coming from different ministries that all of them need to be aligned under a single umbrella, kind of a single hydrogen council, so that we get investors in particular, not...
That's a fair point. Allow me to come to you, Mr. Pradhan, as we wrap this conversation on what do you think would be the ideal energy mix for India in terms of renewable energy and looking at our growing needs?
Energy mix would, in my opinion, definitely be heavily tilted in terms of renewables. I just want Tamanna to make mention of the fact Sanjeev is an old friend and he's a brilliant economist. And of course, I don't want to take issue with him. But my practical experience has been that unless we get on the green hydrogen bandwagon right now with both our feet, we are going to be again left far behind in this race. Number one. Number two, let me also mention that I have seen during my service career the fact that solar power went down from 17 rupees a unit to what it is now at 2 or sub 2 within a period of just 14 years to 13 years. And the initial push down came in actually 1 year when the regulated cost of 17 rupees per unit was brought down to 9 rupees in the year 2012. And since 2012, in 1 decade, it's come down to less than 2. The whole idea has been the very, very strong push that came from the top. See, the political commitment showed on ground, and we were able to do wonders in terms of renewable energy. Now that we have an advantage, and now that we are going forward with our aim of 450 gigawatts, I think it's high time that we moved with both feet into green energy. So that's one thing. As far as energy mix is concerned, looking at the future, it's going to be very heavily renewable energy based. You will require some amount of thermal energy. That's there in all across the board. Everybody agrees with that. But the preponderance would be in terms of renewable energy.
You know, I think we can take heart from the fact that India is very aggressively pursuing this as a policy, and hopefully we'll put our money where our mouth is. This was indeed a very insightful take on how India is taking up the challenge of hydrogen energy. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Step into the Future, presented by GE and partnered by Times Network. I want to thank all of our panelists for speaking with us today and adding that very important analysis and insight. Don't forget to join us for the next episode. Till then, this is Tamanna Inamdar signing off.